We're going to show you the brackets. We're going to break down all the matchups, Charles, but first we want to give some clarity on why the seedings were where they were. And the NMAA did what they said. That's why we were able to predict things this year. And they went down the line. So let's show you what Dusty Young had to say the other day. Seeding and selection criteria that's listed by the NMAA. The first one being finish in regular season district play. Head-to-head matchup. Wins against district champions regardless of classification. The overall record, max preps, Freeman rankings, and then member school input. These are the 6 criteria by you guys. And then the tiebreaker, which I think the most interesting thing is it goes to max preps rankings, the Freeman rankings. That's basically if they've tied in everything possible, then you look at those max prep rankings. Talk about that for a little bit.
Right. Well, you mentioned the 6 criteria points that we use, and that's something our board of directors just passed into effect really this last summer. It's new from our previous criteria that we used for the previous 4 years. But the rationale behind it is really we're trying to be as transparent as possible with our membership and really with the general public, so that going into those seeding and selection meetings, a lot of people are already going to know where their school may fit. And then again, it used to be where people thought the seeding and selection committee was just kind of picking teams, sitting around a room, and well, we think this team's better than that team, and they're going to get the 1 seed or the 5 seed or what have you. And by putting those criteria points in place, we really feel that we can be transparent and really let everyone know that there is a formula really, or a system that's used to go ahead and seed and select all of our teams.
Going through this seeding and selection process, obviously difficult. Everybody knows that. But you take a step back and you look at district play, and I don't think a lot of people understand the rules put into place, but talk about it a little bit. Your finish in district play and your seeding in your district tournament are almost 2 separate things. For example, if 2 teams tie for first place and they play that district championship game, it's just to seed you for your district tournament, not necessarily to place you into the state tournament, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we get a lot of questions on this, especially in the sports basketball and volleyball, because of that district tournament that's played after the regular season. If you have 2 schools that tie for first place in the regular season for district, they're going to have that playoff game usually on Monday after the season's over. The winner of that game, really all that's doing is seeding them number 1 for the district tournament, plus it's giving them that automatic qualifier for the state tournament. So other than that, though, it doesn't have a whole lot of effect on seeding. And as you mentioned, you can actually have 2 schools that tie in regular season district play. One may win that tiebreaker, but the other school, depending upon how they do in the district tournament, depending upon how they've done throughout the entire year, they really could flip-flop that other school that they tied with, just depending upon how everything goes.
You look at your classifications, you got 6 criteria. Is there any weight that's held on one more than the other? Or do you just use them freely?
No, they're all weighted equally, and that's one thing we do get a lot of questions on, because we have a number by each of the criteria points in our bylaws, but really it's just a list. Every one of them is weighted equally. No one has any more bearing on the other when it comes to those seeding and selection meetings. So again, we're going to look at every one of those equally and seed accordingly.
Talk about, again, the Freeman rankings and max preps, and I think, again, a lot of people are confused. They think it's maybe just a bunch of people voting on teams, but really this is a strategic ranking system that is unbiased.
Exactly, yeah. It is basically a formula that looks at a school's body of work. It's similar, I guess, to an RPI that's used in college basketball or other college sports, where it's going to take a school, look at their wins, their losses. It's going to look at the opponents they played, the opponents' wins and losses, and really it's a very layered formula that spits out a ranking that we use as one of our criteria points.
So just giving an example, Team X and Team Y, they tie in 3 categories. They won 3 categories each in the 6 criteria. You go straight to that ranking and say, well, they're ranked higher in this max preps. They're officially a seat above them.
Correct. Yeah, that's something that is new again this year. It was put into place, again, for transparency. It used to be where our committee would get together and 2 teams are tied with all the criteria points, and then really it's up to that committee to make a decision, to choose one over the other. Now it's really straightforward. It's black and white. Whoever has that higher max preps ranking, they're going to earn the higher seed.
You see some of the criteria. We mentioned finishing in regular season district play head-to-head. But there is no quality wins. For example, if a team has a lot of great wins against the teams that finish second in their district, That doesn't come into play though in these rankings.
Not directly. I would say it does indirectly, however, with that Max Preps ranking. There is a part of that ranking that looks at strength of schedule and, wins against quality opponents and whatnot. So that's going to go into that Max Preps ranking. Also within the criteria points, we do have wins against district champions regardless of class. So that's another one. Usually district champions are kind of your top teams throughout the state. So that's another way you can look at it, that quality wins are a small part of it.
I think when people see the rankings come out, they think it's a lot of opinion based in this, but you've eliminated that basically by these rules. You could go down the line and then find seating, right?
Right, exactly. And that's the whole rationale behind going to this seating and selection process. It is very transparent. It's very objective. We get phone calls after the fact all the time asking from a superintendent or a coach or an AD asking, well, how come this team was seated higher than us? And we can look at those criteria points and say, well, they had this over you, they had this over you, you had this over them. And the way all those came together is that team was seated higher.
This may be the most difficult thing to seed for you guys, right? The NMAA, this entire basketball state playoffs, just because of the amount of media attention and everything going into it.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously basketball is huge in New Mexico. It's our largest event by far. Plus, I mean, just the magnitude and the number of teams that are coming to town for this event. We'll be doing our seeding and selection meetings on Sunday. We're actually seeding and selecting for 12 different tournaments if you look at boys and girls in all 6 divisions.
District finish, obviously very huge. There's a lot of speculation that why don't you just make that district tie-breaking game, if so fact, so they win the district, they're the 1 seed, that is end all be all going into the state tournament.
Well, I mean, by winning that playoff game, they get an automatic bid to the state tournament. It just doesn't give them a direct seed. We're still going to look at those criteria points, all the other factors. That way, really, we can get a true seed to the state tournament. If we look at a team's entire body of work, it makes it a lot easier to actually rationalize a 1 seed or a 3 seed or a 5 seed or what have you.
You look at when you place a district opponent, if you finish in district, they have to be by rule seated higher in the state tournament. Sometimes that comes into play where a team may have a great resume, win all of the seeding and selection criteria that you have down, but they're going to end up with a bad seed considering their finish in district play.
It does happen from time to time. Usually the 1 and 2 teams in a district, they're going to be the top teams. That's why they earn that 1 or 2 seed in the district tournament per se. But again, there may be a time where you're in a very strong district and all 5 teams are really good and they're beating each other up and you have no clue how that district's going to finish up. And then that's when it gets difficult for our seeding and selection committee. We may have a team that's ranked number 4 according to Max Preps, but they finished 4th in their district. So I mean, they're going to be a little bit lower in that seeding and selection format, and who knows how that's going to affect the bracket.
District champs, especially with good records that don't necessarily have a high Max Preps ranking and anything else solid, maybe quality wins head to head. How does that go into play as far as getting home games? Are they more favored to get home games, or are you just going to go straight by the criteria?
It's always straight by the criteria, and there may be a weak district here and there each year. That's going to change just dependent upon who's on each team across the state. But say a district champ in a weak district wins 20 games, but their Max Preps ranking is 7 or 8. Based on the criteria points, they're still going to have a very good chance to host a game simply because you're looking at everything.
Because they'll win a couple of the 6 criteria.
Right, exactly. They finished 1st in district. That's one of the criteria points. Their overall record's going to be strong. Their head-to-head, that's going to depend upon who they played throughout the year. So, I mean, really, right off the bat, they have 2 criteria points kind of that they can notch in their belt that they can rely on to hopefully help them get that host game.
Real quick, are you going to stick with, I know you changed the rule where district opponents can play each other in the first round. If there is a way to avoid that by sliding a team back or flip-flopping a team, would you do that?
No, we go straight off the criteria points. So, that's something the committee had to be cognizant about in previous years. But now with the change to our bylaws that allows 2 district teams to match up, it really gives a true seed. So, I mean, it happened in football this past fall. Siebel and Cleveland were matched up in that first round. And, the committee could have, came and said, well, Manzano was the 11. Cibola was a 12. Let's flip-flop those so we don't have district opponents. But we just went straight on the criteria points. It happened that Manzano was 11 and Cibola was 12, and that's the way it fell.
Always appreciate it, Dusty Young.
Thanks, Adam.
Is that good, guys? I appreciate it. Dusty Young, great interview.
Really good interview.
He was able to give us some clarity on how this was seeded. So that all being said, Charles, now we're going to show you some of the brackets, and we're going to break it all down for you. Happy March. Let the madness begin. Come on back. uSports Central.